So today we're going to be looking at some of the most shorted stocks on the ASX as of late March, early April. Now this really caught my attention after we saw the whole saga with GameStop over in the US a few months ago, and I thought it would be pretty interesting to see the story right here on the ASX. Hey guys, my name is Faizy and this channel is about finance and investing. Before we begin, this video is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. We're speaking in a very general sense only. Please do your own research. Let's get into it. So the first company on this list is Webjet, ASX Web. So at the time of filming this video, roughly 12% of the company's overall stocks are shorted, and this data is accurate as of 26th of March 2021. Now also it's important to note that with this data, it is a bit delayed by about 4 trading days, so just keep that in mind. So looking at this short seller data, we can see that back in 2018 there was a few peaks of around 8.2% short interest, and back in late 2018 to mid 2019, short sellers did not have too much interest in the company, and the short interest was only between 1 to 2% in this period. But looking at the second half of 2019, we can see that things really started to pick up, and we saw a peak of 11% back in November 2019, and this was actually before anyone had actually heard about the pandemic. At least back then it wasn't so mainstream. But looking at the March 2020 to around May 2020 period, we can see that there were so many wild ups and downs and so much volatility, which I thought was pretty interesting, as you guys can see by this huge spike upwards. Now before looking into this report, I thought that the short seller interest would just keep on going up during that period, but I didn't realize there would be so much volatility. But we can see that the short seller interest really hit a peak around that mid-September mark at about 18%, which is quite a lot. And since then, it is on a bit of a downtrend because we can potentially see travel opening up towards the later end of this year. And in addition to that, Morgan Stanley actually increased their price target for this company from $3.40 to $4.50, which also led to the short interest being decreased. But if we look at the last month or so, we can see that between the dates of March 22nd and March 23rd, there was a bit of a spike in that period. By the way guys, if you're wondering what this website is, it's called shortman.com.au. I've left a link in description so you can check it out if you're interested. I actually found out about this website from David Kwan, so shout out to David for this amazing resource. Now there's also an alternative way to find out this data from the ASIC website, and I'll also leave a link in description to that website as well. It's got historical data from 2010 and onwards, which is just insane. Now as for Webjet, we can see why it's currently the highest shorted stock, because the travel industry has been hit by COVID pretty hard, and Webjet's online travel services are very much a part of that whole ecosystem. And they also took a huge loss in their most recent announcement, which was to be expected given the global situation. Moving on to the second most shorted stock right now, it is Tassal Group, ASX TGR. Before we discuss what this company actually does, let's have a look at their current short percentages. Now looking at the stats before mid 2018, there was a big short interest of about 7.5 to 8%, similar to what we saw in Webjet around the same sort of time frame. But then it gradually came down in late 2018, as you guys can see, and then onwards from that period until around mid 2020, the percentage of stocks that were shorted was still ranging from anywhere between 0.2% to around 2.5% in this period. But as time went on towards the second half of 2020, we really saw steep uplift in terms of short interest, and it seems that short sellers are continually and specifically targeting this company, as we can see by this exponential increase. And if we switch to the 12-month short interest for this company, we can see that it's definitely on an uptrend at the moment, although there was a bit of a pullback recently. And if we compare this to the stock price, the 1-year return for this company is also sitting negative at about 11.5%. So at the moment, things aren't looking too good if we only judge this by what we can see here. Now, between the dates of March 18th and March 19th, there was a 2.5% drop in short seller interest, and that's due to a company called Yarra Funds Management, who is basically a fund manager. They bought around 5% of the company and became a substantial holder, which means that they're bullish on Tassal, which curbed the short sellers for the time being, as we can see. And recently, Argo Investments, which is a well-known LIC in Australia, they also bought roughly 5% of Tassal, so we might see the short interest die down for the time being. Let's see. So what does Tassal do? Well, they do exactly this. They're a Tasmanian-based company that's been around for over 35 years, and they're essentially a farming company that farms seafood like salmon and prawns and all that stuff. And they supply this domestically and internationally as well. So there you go. the more you know. Now, the third most shorted stock on this list is Flight Centre ASX FLT. You guys probably saw this coming. If we have Webjet on here, we have to have Flight Centre, which is the other counterpart, because it only makes sense. Now, the current short position in the company is 8.8% roughly. And looking at the short sellers, the percentage shorted in this company used to be pretty high back in the 2018s, and the percentage was around 9%. But since then, it got gradually reduced until COVID hit. And once COVID hit, well, you guys can see what happened. It increased up to a peak of 10%. And then had a rapid decline as well. But since then, over the last 6 to 10 months or so, it's been gradually increasing. And a few reasons for this are, of course, COVID related, same as Webjet. And also Flight Centre has also made a huge loss with their announcement in February, so this all plays a huge part. But the short interest in this company hasn't really been a steady or a straight line, because the situation still remains very volatile. Now, for stocks like this to do well, the general population does need to be vaccinated, borders need to be opened, and a lot of other factors as well. And this is just one of the things that needs to happen. But as you guys can see, the way that the vaccines are being rolled out and the speed at which they're being rolled out is pretty slow. And currently we seem to be behind target, and we're lagging behind based on these few articles. So moving forward, this could play a huge part as well, because people cannot leave Australia until they're vaccinated, because airlines like Qantas have basically rejected it, among other airlines as well. And these are my thoughts on this issue anyway. I think this could play a pretty big part, but let me know what you guys think. Now guys, before we go into the fourth most shorted stock on the ASX, if you have found value so far, please leave a like or subscribe. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Now moving on to the fourth most shorted stock on the ASX, and this company is ASX ING, not ING the bank, but ING as in Ingham's Group. Now this company is a poultry processing company, so they farm and process turkeys and chickens, and you get the point. And they're actually Australia and New Zealand's largest integrated poultry producer. Now let's look at how much this company is shorted at the moment, and based on the current statistics, we can see that as of 26 March, they're shorted at about 8.25%, and we can see that over this 3-year term, there have been some massive dips every couple of months, which seems pretty strange. And then the short percentages seem to come back up again to similar levels, as you guys can see. Now, based on this graph, we can see that around early 2018, the short percentage was over 5%, but towards the mid to late 2018, it rose up pretty exponentially to around 13%, and short sellers were aggressively targeting this company. Now, around August 2019, it got so bad to the point where short sellers were targeting 20% of all of ING's shares back then, which is quite a lot when it comes to the ASX. Now, if you compare this situation to America, it basically pales in comparison, because if you look at the GameStop scenario, GameStop's shares were over 100% shorted, so this does not compare at all. Now, some reasons as to why the short percentage was so high back then were because of the rising costs for chicken feed, and there were also some concerns regarding the supply agreements that Ingham's has with Woolworths. Now, since those highs back in 2019, we've seen a gradual reduction of short selling of this stock, as you guys can see, with the percentages going down, but it still remains on the short sellers' radar. Now, the last and final stock on this list, which is the fifth most shorted stock on the ASX, and it is Resolute Mining, ASX RSG. This company is, as the name suggests, it's a mining company, and it has a few gold mines in Africa, in countries like Ghana, Senegal, Mali, and this company has been operating for over 30 years, so let's look at the short interest for this company. So currently the short percentage sits at 7.68%. And as you guys can see in this graph, it's been pretty volatile throughout. And before mid-2019, it was mostly hovering around that 3% to 8% range. But there was a massive dip in late 2019 before things started to massively rise up again and hit a peak in January 2020 at about 11%, before being drastically reduced to around 2.5% for the second half of 2020. But now, based on the graph and the rising trend, it seems that this company is attracting the attention of short sellers once again. Now, researching companies who have a high short seller percentage allows us to find maybe some opportunities that have been quite oversold by the market, and potentially find some stocks that have been trading at a discount. want. But once again guys, just keep in mind that just because the company has a very high short seller percentage, it may not always be a good opportunity in reality, because always remember it's being shorted for a reason. Now if you enjoyed this video, I've made a playlist of all the individual stocks that I've analyzed on this channel, so check this playlist out. Some stocks include Dow, Xeralto, IOU to name a few, and guys, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. So currently the short